In the Kennedy family, there is a woman with a dual legacy, a legendary name, and a hauntingly familiar face. She is Rose Kennedy Schlossberg, the granddaughter of President John F. Kennedy and Jackie O. With her striking resemblance to her grandmother, the media dubbed her Jackie Reincarnated. But instead of embracing the spotlight, Rose did the opposite. She chose to live a near-reclusive life, far from the public eye. Why would the heiress to one of the world's most famous faces choose to remain invisible? This is the story of Rose Schlossberg, about the burden of a legacy and the courageous choice to live an ordinary life, despite her extraordinary name. To truly understand the world that Rose Kennedy Schlossberg was born into, we must first cast our minds back to the era that defined her family forever. The early 1960s in America were a time of breathtaking contradiction. It was an age of profound optimism, a belief in limitless progress, fueled by a booming post-war economy and the youthful vigor of a new administration. John F. Kennedy, with his electrifying charisma, and his wife Jackie, a woman of unparalleled elegance and intellect, seemed to usher in a new golden age. This was Camelot, a term Jackie herself would later use to describe the brief, shining moment of their time in the White House. Television, still a relatively new and magical medium, brought the Kennedys into American living rooms, creating an unprecedented intimacy between the first family and the public. They were not just political figures, they were celebrities, symbols of a modern, sophisticated, and aspirational America. But beneath this shimmering surface of glamour and hope, the world was a dangerous place. The Cold War cast a long, dark shadow, and the threat of nuclear annihilation was a constant, terrifying reality. The nation was also in the throes of a painful and long overdue social revolution, as the civil rights movement fought to dismantle centuries of racial injustice. The Kennedys, for all their glamour, stood at the center of this turbulent vortex. And then, on a sunny day in Dallas in November 1963, it all came crashing down. The assassination of President Kennedy was not just the death of a man, it was the death of an idea, the shattering of a national dream. The trauma of that day is etched into the American psyche, a wound that has never fully healed. In the aftermath, Jacqueline Kennedy, in her black veil and with her quiet, unshakable dignity, became an icon of grace in the face of unimaginable loss. Her primary mission in the years that followed was a fierce and unwavering one: to protect her two young children, Caroline and John Jr., from the crushing weight of their father's legacy and the relentless glare of public scrutiny. She remarried the Greek shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis in 1968, a move that shocked many but was, at its core, a desperate attempt to find a bubble of privacy and security for her children, far from the dangers and demands of the Kennedy name in America. This experience, growing up as the daughter of a martyred president and an iconic, intensely private mother, profoundly shaped Caroline Kennedy. She learned from the earliest age the cost of fame. She understood that the public eye was not a warm and welcoming place, but an intrusive, demanding, and often cruel one. This understanding would become the guiding principle of her own life and later of her approach to motherhood. It is into this complex tapestry of immense historical significance, deep-seated family trauma, and a fiercely guarded privacy that Rose Kennedy Schlossberg was born on June 25, 1988. She was the firstborn child of Caroline Kennedy and the artist and designer Edwin Schlossberg, and the first grandchild of John and Jacqueline Kennedy. Her birth was a significant event, a moment of joy and continuity for a family so often defined by loss. She was named Rose in honor of her formidable great-grandmother, Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy, the matriarch who had been the unwavering bedrock of the Kennedy dynasty. From the very beginning, Caroline and Ed Schlossberg made a conscious and deliberate choice to raise their children, Rose and her younger siblings Tatiana and Jack, as far from the Kennedy mystique as possible. While other famous families might have paraded their children on magazine covers, the Schlossbergs created a fortress of normalcy in their sprawling apartment on Park Avenue in New York City. This wasn't just about avoiding the paparazzi, though. That was certainly part of it. It was a deeper, more philosophical choice. Caroline wanted her children to have what she had been denied, a childhood, a chance to grow, to make mistakes, to find their own passions and forge their own identities without the constant pressure of being a Kennedy. One of the rarely discussed aspects of Rose's early life that illustrates this perfectly was her education. She was enrolled at the Brearley School, one of New York's most prestigious and academically rigorous all-girls private schools. The choice of Brearley was significant. It was known not for producing socialites, but for cultivating sharp, independent, and intellectually curious young women. It was an environment that valued academic achievement and critical thinking above all else. Here she was not JFK's granddaughter. She was simply Rose, a bright student among other bright students. Friends from that time describe a childhood that was, by all accounts, remarkably normal. There were sleepovers, school plays, and family trips, but woven into this normalcy was a powerful unspoken lesson: the importance of substance over style, of intellect over image. Her father, Ed Schlossberg, an artist and the founder of a multidisciplinary design firm, brought a world of creativity and intellectual rigor into the home. Their dinner table conversations were more likely to be about art, history, and literature than about politics or public life. This upbringing created a fascinating dynamic. Rose was undeniably a part of the Kennedy clan. She spent holidays at the family compound in Hyannisport and was close to her extended family. She was raised with a deep understanding of her family's history and its tradition of public service. But she was also a Schlossberg, raised in the heart of New York's intellectual and creative world, with a father who encouraged a more artistic and less conventional path. She was, in essence, the product of two very different but equally powerful legacies. And as she grew into a young woman, the question of which path she would choose or how she would merge the two would become the defining theme of her life. After graduating from Brearley, Rose made a choice that seemed, on the surface, to be a nod to family tradition. She enrolled at Harvard University, the alma mater of her grandfather, her mother, and so many other members of the Kennedy clan. But her time at Harvard would prove to be anything but a simple retracing of her family's footsteps. It was here that she began to publicly, though quietly, forge an identity that was uniquely her own. At Harvard, Rose chose to major in English. This was a significant choice. While many of her relatives had pursued degrees in government or history, the traditional training grounds for a life in politics, Rose gravitated toward the world of literature and storytelling. It was a sign that her passions lay in the realm of culture and creative expression, rather than in the corridors of power. Once again, her time at university was characterized by a remarkable lack of the kind of media frenzy that often surrounds the children of famous families. She was not a campus celebrity. She was, by all accounts, a serious and dedicated student who blended into the fabric of university life. She participated in classes, wrote her papers, and navigated the hallowed halls of Harvard Yard with a quiet anonymity that was in itself a testament to her parents' success in shielding her from the more burdensome aspects of her fame. But it was during her time at Harvard that the world first got a glimpse of Rose Kennedy Schlossberg's personality, and it was a surprisingly fresh and unexpected one. While her larger creative endeavors came later, her education at Harvard nurtured an interest in storytelling and social satire, leading to later projects that clearly reflected her independent, humorous, and critical personality. In 2009, working with a friend, she co-created and starred in a quirky, satirical web series called Endorsement. The series, which they produced for their YouTube channel, was a smart and funny take on a dystopian, near future where society is obsessed with celebrity and consumer culture. The plot revolved around two young women trying to navigate a world where every conversation, every relationship is an opportunity for a product endorsement. An anecdote from the making of Endorsement offers a telling insight into her character. When the student production team was struggling with a shoestring budget, Rose, rather than using her family's vast resources or connections, reportedly rolled up her sleeves and took on a multitude of roles behind the scenes. She helped with writing, set design, and even catering. This down-to-earth, collaborative spirit revealed a young woman who was determined to be valued for her own contributions, for her work ethic, and her creativity, rather than for her last name. After graduating from Harvard in 2010, Rose's journey into the world of creative arts continued. She pursued a master's degree in interactive telecommunications at New York University's prestigious Tisch School of the Arts. This choice further solidified her interest in new media and innovative forms of storytelling. It was a clear signal that she was not interested in the traditional paths of politics or law that had defined so many of her relatives. She was a child of the digital age, and she was determined to find her own way to communicate, to create, and to contribute. It was during this period, as she was transitioning from a student to a young professional, that the comparisons to her grandmother, Jackie O, reached a fever pitch. A series of photographs of her taken at various public and private events went viral. The physical resemblance was undeniable and to many, deeply captivating. The same dark, expressive eyes, the same elegant bone structure, the same understated but impeccable sense of style. For a public that still held Jackie in such high regard, this visual echo of a beloved icon was irresistible. The media narrative was simple and seductive. Jackie is back. Rose was hailed as the second coming of Camelot's queen, the mysterious heir to Jackie's throne of style and grace. But this narrative, as compelling as it was, missed the point. It was a comparison based solely on appearance, and it failed to recognize the fundamental differences in their personalities and their chosen paths. While Rose undoubtedly possesses a natural poise and elegance that is reminiscent of her grandmother, her public demeanor is markedly different. Jackie, for all her desire for privacy, understood and to some extent cultivated her public image. She was a master of the nonverbal language of style and mystique. Rose, on the other hand, seems to actively shy away from the spotlight. Her public appearances are rare, and when she is photographed, she often appears reserved, almost uncomfortable with the attention. She is not a woman who is courting the camera. This is not a rejection of her grandmother, but rather a reflection of a different personality and a different era. Rose is not interested in being a style icon or a society figure. Her passions are intellectual and creative. She is a writer, a producer, a creator. She is a woman who is more interested in the content of her work than in the image she projects. And in a world that is often obsessed with surface-level appearances, this quiet focus on substance is in itself a powerful statement. The Jackie Reborn narrative was an easy story for the media to sell, but it was a story that overlooked the far more interesting truth. the story of a young woman who is quietly and determinedly becoming her own person. The Kennedy family is no stranger to controversy. The history of the clan is a complex tapestry of incredible public service and deep personal flaws, of dazzling triumphs and devastating tragedies. From the political scandals that dogged JFK's presidency to the personal struggles of later generations, the Kennedy name has been associated with as much turmoil as it has with glory. Rose Kennedy Schlossberg, however, has managed to live a life that is, by all accounts, remarkably free of personal scandal. Her decision to maintain a low profile, to focus on her education and her creative work, has effectively shielded her from the kind of intense, often destructive media scrutiny that has followed so many of her relatives. This is not an accident. It is the result of a conscious and lifelong strategy, a strategy learned from her mother and grandmother. But while she has avoided personal controversy, the weight of her family's history is an undeniable and ever-present backdrop to her life. The public's fascination with the Kennedys is insatiable, and as the eldest grandchild of JFK and Jackie, she is a living link to that legendary past. Her very existence is a reminder of the Kennedy curse, the seemingly endless string of tragedies that have befallen the family. The most profound of these tragedies after the death of her grandfather was the death of her uncle John F. Kennedy Jr. In 1999, when Rose was just 11 years old, her uncle, his wife Carolyn, and her sister Lauren were killed when the small plane he was piloting crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. The death of John Jr., the handsome, charismatic heir to the Camelot legacy, was a devastating blow to the family and to a nation that still saw him as America's prince. For a young Rose, this loss must have been incomprehensible, but it also would have been a brutal and early lesson in the perilous nature of her family's fame. It was a reminder that the Kennedy name, for all its privilege, came with a heavy and often tragic price. This event, perhaps more than any other, likely solidified her and her parents' resolve to pursue a life of quiet normalcy, a life as far as possible from the risks and pressures that had consumed her uncle. One of the more subtle ways in which Rose has engaged with her family's legacy is through her quiet but consistent commitment to the tradition of public service. While she has eschewed a career in electoral politics, her work often touches on themes of social justice and historical memory. In 2017, she starred in a documentary series for the cable channel Spike TV called Time: The Kalief Browder Story. The series told the harrowing true story of a young man from the Bronx who was arrested at the age of 16 for allegedly stealing a backpack and then spent 3 years in the brutal Rikers Island jail, much of it in solitary confinement, without ever being convicted of a crime. He was eventually released, but the psychological trauma of his ordeal was so profound that he later took his own life. The series was a powerful and unflinching look at the deep flaws in the American criminal justice system. It was a piece of advocacy journalism designed to shed light on a profound social injustice. For Rose Schlossberg to be a driving force behind such a project was significant. It was a contemporary and creative expression of the Kennedy family's long-standing commitment to social justice, a commitment that had been championed by her grandfather and her granduncles, Robert and Ted Kennedy. She was using her skills as a storyteller and producer not for entertainment, but for a higher purpose. She was using her platform, however quietly, to give a voice to the voiceless. This project offers a crucial insight into how Rose navigates her legacy. She is not running for office, but she is engaging with the political and social issues of her time. She is doing it on her own terms through the medium she knows best, storytelling. It is a modern 21st century interpretation of what it means to be a Kennedy in public life, Another fascinating and little-known aspect of her professional life is her work with Park Pictures, a highly respected commercial and film production company. In 2016, she collaborated with Park Pictures to launch a female-focused comedy series through a project called P-Queen. The company's mission was to produce and develop comedy projects, with a particular focus on female-led stories. This venture once again highlights her passion for storytelling, her sharp sense of humor, and her commitment to elevating female voices in a male-dominated industry. It's a quiet form of activism, a way of affecting change, not through speeches and legislation, but through culture. The historical significance of Rose Kennedy Schlossberg's story lies not in any single grand achievement, but in the quiet, consistent choices she has made. In an age where celebrity and lineage are often seen as a license for a life of self-promotion and public spectacle, she has chosen a path of substance, creativity, and profound personal privacy. Rose Kennedy Schlossberg inherited one of the world's most famous faces, but her true legacy is her choice to remain unseen. Her legacy is not a recreation of Camelot, but a powerful statement on authenticity. She proved that success isn't measured by public attention, but by the freedom to live life on your own terms. In a noisy world, her ordinary life is her most extraordinary achievement.